everyone. It's so good to have you today, and welcome to Recovery in Action. And I am so pleased to welcome Karen Rose today. She is from the Crossroads Recovery Center in Richmond, and she's going to tell us all about how she's actually the founder and what motivated her to get started in helping women in recovery and her experiences. And she just has a lot of information, a lot of wisdom that we're going to draw from today. And I just want to encourage everyone in knowing that there is hope out there in recovery. As long as you have breath in your body, there is hope. And I just want to emphasize that there are a lot of things going on in our community. The Detox Center is now open. We have meetings almost every night of the week. Monday night, there's Better Days. Tuesday night, they have 2 classes at Community Corrections. Wednesday night, they have Anger Management and another class at Community Corrections. Thursday night, they have Community Corrections, plus there is a meeting at the Parish House. Friday night, the Parish House. And Saturday, I believe they're working on something that they just don't have anything going as of yet. But on Sunday evening, there is a meeting at St. Gabriel's also, and I believe at the Parish House. And I think they are even doing a class on Sunday afternoon at Community Corrections also. So there's a lot of things going on in our community, and there is resources that can help you and give you support. And if you need any help finding them or information on addresses or phone numbers, please feel free to call me at the House of Ruth, and I will definitely get you that information. But today I just want to tell you that you're loved and that there is support. Now, I want to get talking with our guest because she has a lot to say, and I want us to give her plenty of time. Karen Rose, we welcome you.
Well, thank you.
Thank you for coming.
I heard a lot about you before I ever met you. For years I've heard about you. I worked in a Dunn Center down here, and I kept hearing about you and the work that you were doing.
Yeah, that's the same way, and here it's been 8 years. You started up there, and I started down here, and we just met, 2 months ago up in Richmond? Yeah. So it's a pleasure.
Yes, it is.
So you're the founder, and you were a director for a long time.
My husband and I are founders.
Yes.
I got to get his plug in.
Get his
Paul
plug
Rose.
in there. Yes. Yeah. You know, that's the same way with me. Russell, he helps me with everything I do. I couldn't do it without him because we were just talking before of how it can drain you.
It absolutely can.
The hours, because addiction happens 24/7. It's not no respect of person, no respect of time. And lots of times it takes away from your family. It takes away from, a lot of events that I would love to go to that I'm busy doing other things, but I wouldn't trade it for anything. I love what I do.
I love working with addicts.
Yeah.
They're interesting, and you never get bored.
Oh, no. There's never a dull moment, that's
and they're
for
not as energetic as kids. I used to work with kids, and they had too much energy. I can usually outsmart an addict, usually.
Yeah. But the thing about it is, and this is what I tell people all the time, some of the smartest women I have ever met are in addiction.
I was in addiction. I believe that because I'm smart. So
yes, absolutely, absolutely. You wouldn't be where you are today.
Most of the ladies I work with think I'm just an old lady. They don't realize that I was doing some of their behaviors before they were born. It's like I wasn't always my age.
Me too. And then you tell them stuff like that, and they look at you and they're like, "Are you serious?"
Sometimes I show them pictures, and they go, "Oh, yeah." In my minis,
Oh, yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
That's pretty gross.
We haven't always been old, have we?
That's right.
So tell me a little bit. I know there's a reason that you wanted to help women in recovery, and you actually worked here in Connersville for a long time.
6 years at Dunn Center.
Yes, and you have a degree in mental
I have
health.
a master's in education. It's counseling and guidance from Trevecca University in Tennessee.
Yeah. So you have quite the education that goes behind.
I am educated way above my intelligence.
Yeah. You know, though, they're finding out, and I'm sure you've seen this for years. So, lots of times there's the dual diagnosis, they call it. There's a mental issue going on.
Absolutely.
Before the addiction ever starts. And the addiction just adds to what's going on with the mental. So just tell us a little bit about yourself and tell us how you got started.
Well, I got started drinking. That's what started my running a rehab was first I had to go do some research. No, not really. But
check it
I
out
married,
first.
I was raised in a Christian home. I married a guy that drank, and I didn't really like to drink, but I didn't want to argue with him, and I thought, oh, well, it won't hurt, to drink a little bit. And I was kind of rebellious against God at the same time. I kind of had the idea that God was this guy up there just waiting for me to have a good time so he could say, aha, caught you. So I really had a skewed concept who God was. I didn't understand grace. I was raised in church, but I didn't understand grace. I thought you got saved and then you had to stay saved by being good enough to be saved.
By being good, yeah.
And I had tried that, I would go to the altar and I'd pray and I'd go home, and the next day it wouldn't even be noon, and I thought, well, I blew it. And I didn't understand that. And my parents were somewhat perfectionist. I think they kind of had the same idea about God. Because my mother, when she was in her 90s, she said, I hope I'm good enough to get to heaven.
Aww.
Isn't that sad? But anyway, not understanding that she wasn't, but that God was.
Right.
So my concept of God was, it was the all or nothing. I was either going to be good or I was going to
be bad.
Be bad.
Yeah.
So I made the decision to drink with my first husband, and then we got into addiction that was, it goes down pretty fast. We were married 11 years. No, 9 years. And then we got divorced, and then he got killed in a car wreck. The 4th of July, matter of fact.
Oh, wow.
Yesterday would be 46 years, leaving me with 3 children. And then I was really angry at God and angry at everyone. And so my drinking kind of escalated then. And my idea was I just had to find another guy I didn't really grieve that loss. I just found another guy to take his place. The guy I found owned a bar, so that worked out really good.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it was after 7 years, and both my husbands were mean alcoholics, abusive alcoholics, physically abusive. I divorced my husband. And I just thought I needed to find another drunk in another bar. I mean, seriously, because about that time I was 38. A lot of people were getting divorced about that time, looked like, and I had a lot of prospects. But my husband that I had just divorced asked me to go to church with him. And I remembered going to church with my first husband, this same pastor, Brother Holman at Hillcrest Baptist. And we walked out of church with my first husband and I. We walked out of church that night, and I said to him, I wanted to go forward. And he said, I did too. He said, we'll do it some other time. And then he got killed 2 years later.
Oh,
we never did do it.
You never.
So when my second husband asked me to go to church with him, I said, yeah, I'll go. But I had no plans of going back with him. I mean, that was the furthest thing from my mind. So we went to church, and they gave the altar call, and I thought, I'm not falling for this. I turned around to walk out after church, and a little voice said to me, what's it going to take? And I thought, what is it going to take? is it going to take seeing one of my children dead? Because I knew that I was running away from God. And I said to Paul, my second husband, I said, I'm going back tomorrow night and I'm going to get right with God. And he said, well, let's don't go crazy here. Because he was just trying to get me out to go out with him.
Right.
But he went back the next night and we both went forward. And he got saved and I came back to the Lord. And then we got married, remarried. And I didn't even want to remarry him. I thought, oh man, I just got rid of this guy. But he said to me, you'll see, I'll change. And you'll learn to love me again. And that's been 37 years ago.
Aww.
But the interesting thing about that was we didn't know each other sober.
Yeah.
We just knew each other drunk, and it's like, who is this guy? And he thought of me, you know, he'd say, I liked you better drunk. And I thought, I liked you better drunk.
Yeah.
But the one thing we had in common, we wanted to serve the Lord. And we knew that we cared about each other and we cared about our families. And so we just worked on the issues. My husband went to Bible school. So my husband that I live with now is my second and third husband.
Your second and third.
My second.
Yeah.
And my third husband is a lot better than my second husband was.
That's cute. That's cute.
But he went to Bible school and we went to Tennessee and he went to work at the mission. He graduated from Bible school and became a minister. And we went to Tennessee and worked for Nashville Union Mission. He did. And I worked for the state, and then I went for the federal government. And I was still having a lot of anger issues of things that happened. I started going to counseling. And the counselor talked to me, as a Christian counselor, he talked to me about my anger. And even though I was a Christian, I was still angry about a lot of things. And he said, what's your anger costing you? Is it worth what it's costing you? And I thought, no, it's not, but I didn't know how to give it up.
Right.
I thought, if I give up my anger, what will protect me? What will protect me from someone else hurting me? Because I'd been hurt a lot by men. And the answer was, God will protect you. But it was the scariest thing I ever did.
Yeah.
To give
Was
it
it
up.
familiar?
No.
Everything else was familiar, the arguing, the anger.
And it's still hard for me just not to jump up and get angry and say something, but just keep my mouth shut. Mm-hmm. And it's hard to pray for someone who's mad at me if they're into an argument with my husband, you know, because we can say things to hurt each other. And pray for him, that's the hardest thing. But anyway, so I started going to this counselor, and he really... I was angry at my mother, I was angry at my dad, I was angry at Paul. I think I was angry at God. Although I was a Christian, I was angry at God. God just wasn't acting right.
That's right.
And so I thought he would give me books to read, and I just soak it up. I thought, why hasn't someone told me this stuff? Why hasn't someone told me all these? Because my whole life I would try to figure, why does someone acting the way they're acting? And they'd give me some reason. I'd go, oh, that's not the reason. You know, I knew there was a reason, but I didn't know why. So when I started reading these books, and Christian books, and I read the Bible, I started understanding why I was doing what I was doing, why other people were doing what they were doing. People do things for a reason.
Right.
They don't just off the wall do something. They do something because it gets them what they want.
Right.
So my crazy behavior was not getting me what I wanted. But anyway, so I decided to go to school. And so I went back to school, got my bachelor's and got my master's. And my husband was running the rehab. And then I was working, well, I started working for a foster care agency. And so, let's see, it would be 18 years ago, we came back to Indiana from Tennessee. And I went to work at a boys' home in Richmond. And he started Shepherd's Way Christian Ministry, which was a transitional house for men.
For men, yes.
He was retired at that point. He's older than me, a lot older than me.
A lot.
A lot. No, not really. But then I started working for Dunn Center down here, which is Centerstone now.
Right.
And I was running their groups, and I would do assessments on women, and I would know, okay, they need residential treatment, but there wasn't any place to send
Right.
them. There just wasn't. I put them in IOP, but they were still living in the same situation.
Environment, yeah.
And it's like, I was telling my husband, I said, these women need someplace to go. And so when I retired, right before I retired, I would start looking for places that we could make a house out of. And my husband said, we don't have any money. Shepherd's Way at that point was working with men. And he said, we don't have any money. And I said, well, what if God gives us a house? And he said, oh, sure, God's going to give us a house. So God gave us a house.
Yeah.
And so,
I totally agree.
Yeah. Because he cares about these women.
Yes, he does.
They're precious children to him, and he knows what they've been through. And so anyway, we started working transitional living house, women coming out of prison, but we soon realized that they needed more treatment than just transitional living. Men, I think, do it better at transitional living. Women, there's such complicated issues with women that they need help. They need more help.
I think women cover things up, wear the
Yeah.
mask so much.
And women
more
can function in their addiction because of their sexuality longer than men can.
Yes.
So anyway, my husband was looking for another transitional living house for men, and he made an offer on this place, and he just didn't have any peace about it. And he said, I just don't have any peace about that place. And I mean, it was a good offer, and he told the realtor, he said, I don't want that place. And she said, well, what do you want? And he said, well, I'd like to have that old hospital down there. And he was kidding.
Oh my.
And she said, well, it's being repossessed. And she said, I'll see if I can get it for you. So the bank gave us the hospital and the building that the women are in now, and then we bought the house. We bought it for $65,000. It's 8 acres. And so,
Oh yeah, because that's a nice place.
yeah. And then it was like, okay, how are we going to feed these women? How are we going to do it? People start giving us money. I mean, I'm serious. And just like the ladies were saying today, they wanted some chicken. Someone gave them a bunch of chicken, and they were out of chicken. So they asked the director's husband, said, can you get us some chicken? He said, no, you're going to eat bologna. So that day in the afternoon, they got 40 pounds of chicken.
40 pounds, isn't that something? That's just like the Lord, though.
It is.
It is.
I mean, the Lord just sees the need and that's the way he did with that place. We paid the building off. We bought the whole thing for $65,000, paid it all off. The house is worked on it for 8 months, getting it in shape, but God is good. And we've had over 300 women graduate.
Isn't that wonderful? Now, did you do the renovation and stuff yourself? Did
We
volunteers
did.
help?
Well,
Oh, wow.
a lot of volunteers,
Yeah.
but Paul and I worked down there every day except Sunday for 8 months.
Yeah. You sound so much like Russell and I, because that's exactly how he and I, anything that needs to be done, I'm like, Russell, but we have a lot of churches, organizations, different places that volunteers, and it takes everybody.
Yes.
It takes everybody. We just can't do it ourselves. It would be too
Well,
too
my husband,
overwhelming.
this is how God prepares you. My husband was a terminal manager for a trucking company, and then he was the operations manager for this trucking company. When he went to Tennessee, he ran the rehab. It was kind of like an operations manager.
Right.
And so he is good at running a rehab. Now, I'm not so much, but I know the clinical part. But God used everything in our lives up to the point that we opened the rehab. It's like everything in our life. And if we hadn't have done it, we had the opportunity to do it, but it was scary at our age, especially 65, and he was in his 70s. We would have regretted it the rest of our life.
Oh, yeah.
It's either here it is. God gave it to us, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I am so glad that we had the guts to do it, and God gave us the guts
Oh
to do
yeah,
it.
and the thing about it is, and just like now you've passed it on
Yes.
to Wendy,
And she loves it.
she's and see, but had you not, started
I think someone else would have done it, but I wouldn't have gotten the benefit of and the pleasure
being a part of
being
it.
part of it.
Yeah. So what all do you offer there, and how long is your program?
It's a 4-month program. We also offer classes. There's 4 classes a day. We concentrate on the emotional, the physical, and the spiritual, and somewhat the behavioral and the social too. But that all goes together. I think a lot of the women, like you said, are probably dually diagnosed or should be dually diagnosed. We don't offer medication. It's not a medical facility. There are women who have many more complicated issues that we can't. If they have a physical problem that we can't handle, we don't have a medical person on staff.
Right,
We
that's
have
how
to
we
take
are.
them to the hospital.
Yeah.
But and we don't detox. Now you have a detox down here now.
Yes, Fayette Regional just opened their detox center.
Oh, good.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
So
a
we
big
do. It's a
need.
46-bed facility. Yes, they just actually opened this past week.
But
So-
we offer 4 classes a day. A typical day is they would get up, they would do their morning devotion. They do what they call Sister Circle, which is they pray and they talk. And then they would have the first class at 9:15. At 10:30, they would have another class. They'd eat lunch. Then in the afternoon, they have a couple classes. They also have individual. We have individual counselor for all the girls. They see someone once a week. And they go to church 3 times a week. They go to AA or NA on Saturdays. They go to CR on Thursdays.
They're in Richmond. Now,
Yeah.
is their classes there on site,
Yes,
or do they
are.
go? Okay.
No, they're on site.
Well, that makes it nice.
And the classes are done with volunteers. And the good thing about it is you will get a lot of different personalities, a lot of different connections with the volunteers. One girl might not like this volunteer especially, but someone else really picks something up from what she says.
Yeah. That personality trait between
Yeah.
people. Yeah. Yeah. So, how many women do you have right now?
I think there's 12 right now.
Okay.
Also, she's been doing aftercare there. Well, not exactly aftercare. It's more like transitional living there. At one time, we had them in a house in Richmond, but now they stay there on the program. There's an apartment upstairs, and the girls that have completed the program that are in what they call the Victory House program stay there, and then they transition. They transition into Richmond. And then they act as mentors for the girls.
Now, do you take insurance, or is yours mainly private pay, or?
We don't charge the girls anything.
Oh, you don't charge?
There's no
That's awesome.
There's no charge.
Okay, so you're strictly ran on donations?
Yes, strictly.
Okay. That's
And we
awesome.
now we do get some grants, but we don't get any grants that would restrict what we teach as far as the Bible.
Yeah, the biblical teachings, yeah. That's
So,
exactly how, yeah. Because I'm a firm believer, I'm like you, we focus on the spiritual, the physical, and the mental aspect of it.
And something I was talking to you about before was the part that men play in the women's life and in their recovery and in their addiction. I think that my addiction was based on a relationship addiction before I became. Because what I did, I decided to drink because it wasn't something I necessarily wanted to do, but because my husband was doing it, so I did what he wanted me to do. And I lost myself. I think that as teenage women, a lot of times we don't find out who we are before we get in these relationships. We go from being with our parents to finding Mr. Wonderful, and then we become who he wants us to be. And then if that doesn't work out, we try to find someone else.
And then become who they want us
Yes.
to be. So yeah.
And then if we start to get sober, it's like, I don't know who I am. And maybe he's afraid, I know with Paul and he was afraid of me finding out who I was because he thought I would leave him. And
that happens sometimes.
It does.
It's like you said, you didn't know him sober. You only knew him when you were drinking. And there's that happens lots of times when people become sober. I mean, we call them drug buddies or, drug relationships, however you want to do it. But I mean, whenever they sober up, they're like, I don't even know how I could stand to be around them because everything about them is something that they didn't like. But in your addiction,
Paul and I had a lot going for us. And I think God did put us together for a reason. We're kind of polar opposites, though, but that works out. A lot of our minister says that when you're dating, opposites attract, and when you're married, opposites attack.
That's good. That's very
But you
good.
kind of even each other out if you can just stick with it. The one thing we had going for us is I think we really cared about each other and we cared about the Lord.
Once you realized. Yeah.
I didn't always like him, but I always cared about him.
Yeah.
And always loved him.
Yes. I tell you, and that's one of the things, and that's one thing, we do a lot of classes like on boundaries and relationships and getting to know people in your life and things like that. Because sometimes even like you were talking a few minutes ago about losing yourself. I think we do that with our families. We can do that with our children. It's more than, and when we realize that and we set boundaries and we set goals in our lives, we can't let other people always
that's
dictate.
Not a popular thing to do.
No, it isn't.
Boundaries, is it?
No. I mean, it goes against your grain. There's a lot of people, I have a particular woman that I'm working with now, it's like, set your boundaries. I mean, she's such a people pleaser, and it's like, don't do that. Your feelings matter. What you want matters. It doesn't have to be what everybody else is wanting you to do. But I think people don't have that understanding because they have always been taught,
Nice little girls smile and they do what daddy and mommy want them to do. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that when we lose ourselves. I remember I went to a seminar in Tennessee, and this woman says, when you find Mr. Wonderful and become one, make sure you don't become him.
That's good. Yeah, that's very good. I mean, that's a lot of wisdom.
Yeah. And I think a lot of our culture teaches us that if you just find the right one, it's going to fix you. And really, it's true if we find the right one, but it's Jesus Christ. It's not another human being that's fallible.
Right.
And that's what I did, and that's what the Lord has been so good to me. And it's a journey.
It's
and just getting sober is not the end of it. It's the beginning of the journey, but it's pretty exciting.
Yeah. There's so many steps in recovery, so many. And like you said, getting sober, that's the first. But oh my gosh, the journey after that and what you have to do to maintain and to keep it and get your support.
Yeah, and I was telling the girls today, I said, life is hard. There are things that are going to come up that are just going to knock your socks off of you. And I said, you better realize that just getting sober isn't the answer.
Right. Getting tools, getting resources, getting Christ, praying.
And learning to trust Him.
And learning who you are in Him. If you can get a relationship like that, the other relationships will come in and they will fall into place for sure. But it's losing ourselves. But it has been great having you here.
Well, thank you, Sharon.
I've learned so much about you. I've enjoyed this, and thank you for what you're doing. And even though you're volunteering now, thank you for having Crossroads and having another resource available.
Well, thank you. Thank
All
you
right.
for what you're doing.
Thank
and
you.
I admire you very much.
Thank you, and I do you also. And thank you for being with us today. And tell your friends, share this on YouTube. It was great to have you. God bless you. Bye-bye.